Hello, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Real Tech, Real Talk, a podcast from cexposure.tech. Today, AI seems to be everywhere, but is it always the right answer to every business problem? Amidst all the excitement and hype, it's crucial to have a clear-eyed view of AI's potential and pitfalls. Joining us to discuss how companies can assess the right business case for AI, harness its power for tangible results, and navigate the strategic choice of building versus buying solutions is the Director of Singapore's National Trades Union Congress, Matthew Chu. Hello, Matthew. Welcome to Real Tech, Real Talk.
Hi, nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure having you, Matthew. You've had a long and illustrious career bridging gap between business problems and technology solutions, right? You've helped organizations transform and thrive in the digital age. Maybe you could share with us your journey and some of the key milestones and experiences that have basically shaped your expertise in this field.
Okay. I will say probably been working about 20 plus years right now. I will say there are two key milestones to how I evolved in terms of what I've learned, in terms of what I've been able to try and contribute to the organizations that I've supported as well. The first, I would say, milestone that spent a majority of my time. I was actually I started out in Microsoft as one of my careers. I was internal focused, which means that I've done multiple roles within Microsoft with respect to how they use their data to drive conversations. The data sits on top of a set of systems which are enterprise class, I guess, from that perspective, you're talking about Microsoft. And therefore being very cognizant about the different processes that we have to take into consideration in order to get the right data into the right systems and use it for insights and analysis as well. So I've done a series of multiple roles within Microsoft, and that's kind of built my, I would say, first point of reference on what and how we can drive organizations better using data. So that's my first, I would say, majority of my time as well. I left Microsoft, started my own company after that to provide analytics consulting and services. That will be my second major milestone. I spent, I would say, majority of my working career there, more than half my time from that angle as well. And that's pretty much about taking the experiences I've had as from a business user, from how you want to implement the use of information, use of data to drive business conversations, and how do we therefore translate that into supporting other organizations to do that as well. So I did that for more than 13 years. Organizations across large MNCs to large local to non-profit as well, wide spectrum, and that was very fulfilling, and that allowed me to build my passion to have organizations use data essentially. I would say those are my two main milestones. I've since, I left ClearOps. I exited because I sold it to NCS, and I'm now in my new journey, and that's where I'm part of NTUC Congress, supporting the workers in terms of and the organization internally as well. Again, how do we use data better? How do we drive a data-driven organization and culture from that? So that's I got three big buckets on my third leg of my career from that angle.
Okay. Thanks for the intro, Matthew. Appreciate it. So, to AI or not to AI? That's the big question today, right? So,
Yeah.
and I like to start with a little focus on practical application and maybe a bit of learning from the past, if you may. I mean, the history of technology is basically filled with examples of both successful and unsuccessful implementations, right? And today we constantly hear about this transformative potential of AI, and many companies eager to jump on the bandwagon. In fact, I would say that I came across a couple of research points like McKinsey's State of AI in early 2024 survey. Apparently revealed for the past 6 years, AI adoption by respondents' organizations has hovered at about 50%. But this year, adoption has jumped to 72%. And there's another survey that was done even further back. That's done by Deloitte, where 94% of the respondents say that AI is critical to success over the next 5 years. I mean, that's all well and good. But I think the fact is that AI isn't a magic bullet for every business problem. So I feel it's important to kind of separate the hype from reality.
Yep.
So how do you suggest organizations generally cut through the noise and determine which problems are truly ripe for AI intervention and which might be better tackled through other means?
I think there are a couple of, I would say, qualification criteria. This is something which I've, along the ways, if you take the experiences that I have around data and therefore apply it. I mean, essentially, AI needs to sit on data. So the principles and the practices around data, and therefore how do we take AI into consideration? We can draw a parallel from the angle. From the AI angle, in terms of how we qualify, one of the key questions I try and ask myself as we come through in the last couple of years, conversations about using AI, Gen AI. I mean, in the past was more AI, now it's more Gen AI. Will be the first question I ask is, if I was given sufficient amount of time, if I was given sufficient amount of people, I can throw as many people as I can at it. It can give me as much time as I can to solve the problem. Can it be solved? That's the first question that we need to be able to answer. A lot of AI, Gen AI, it's everything. It's very dependent on a set of history, results that were derived from historical records, and that ultimately firstly forms the base. And if it's a problem that we can solve, if I throw enough people at it, I throw enough time and it can solve it, yes, it is something that we qualify that AI can solve. That's the first thing we need to qualify first from the angle. Then we need to open the box a little bit more, right? When we open the box and we double click down from the angle, some of the questions we do have to ask ourselves is, if you're using some form of AI, first is, do you expect it to make a decision for you? Or is it something to support you to make a decision? That's the first thing we need to firstly ascertain. Different things go through the head when you ask this question. Wow, whatever it says, am I going to just take it and am I going to just execute from the angle? The second thing we have to relate to is this decision that either you have to make, or you want the machine to make, you want AI to make. Is this significant? Is it financially high risk? Is it something that will make or break? Right. That weightage and that you need to put onto it in terms of importance is the other thing we got to ask ourselves. Are you willing to let AI make the decision? Right. Those are two things we need to relate to. And that's the first part of decision making from the angle. The other bit is that we need to ask ourselves is, regardless of whether you're going to do it yourself, meaning a co-piloted model, right? Microsoft uses the term co-pilot to say, to help you make a decision, it's going to support you, it's not going to make a decision for you. Or you could have something that is very throughput, meaning that the AI makes a decision. Then the next thing you have to ask yourself is it going to be good enough? Are the results going to be good enough that you would use it and you would trust it to make that decision for you? That good enough, be it called accuracy, be it correctness, or whatever you call it, reliability, precision, that's a second variable we have to take into consideration as well, right? Because at some point in time, if it's not good enough, what are you going to do about it? It's not all about the machine. The machine is part of the larger ecosystem of action that you need to potentially try and take as well. So that's things that we go through ahead to try and qualify a little bit more. I mentioned in the beginning that the AI practice or the approach is very much seeped into data. One of the data considerations we have, in simple terms, is say rubbish in, rubbish out.
Yep.
Right. That term, there are so many different variations of it, but if you decoded that term, rubbish in and rubbish out, first thing we need to know is what's out. We need to be very clear about what do we want to get out of it. Right. Defining that out of it, even to the level of data, we'll say, what's the baseline? Right.
Yeah.
What should that outcome look like, and what is the current state that we are trying to be able to get to? Right. That needs to be able to tell you, say that, yeah, I need to exit at 5 open rates. I'm currently at 3 open rates. That's my in and that's my out. Then we are clear about what the outcome is going to be. Right. And as we look at the in, it's always good to understand it's 3 open rates kind of a thing, analogy that we want to paint. Is there a history around it? Where did that 3 come about? Is it someone decided to just stick their hand up and says, it's going to be this? Or is it going to be something that's referenced to a set of history and context? And is it potentially going to change across time? Behaviors change. Sentiment, let's say you talk about sentiment analysis and sentiment tracking as an AI component as well. Language changes. The way people use language changes. My kid speaks very differently than I do, using very different terms that I do. If I'm using sentiment tracking from 5 years ago, I probably won't see what's happening right now. So this is where we try and break down the rubbish in, rubbish out conversation, what's coming into the data, and therefore what are we going to try and get out of it. So these are kind of the things that we need to be able to take in consideration. Can it be done manually to begin with? Can we with amount of resources? Is it something that, from a decision perspective, is it important? Is it something you're going to make? Machine's going to make? Do you have data coming in? Are you very clear about the outcome? Once you kind of get these pieces together, ultimately relates to the final question: is it going to be worth the time and effort for you to get the reward? You're going to spend an amount of time to get to whatever the outcome may be, and is that return on investment, right? Effort versus reward, something that's important. And I think that's the most important thing that people need to be able to kind of go through that train of thought to discern AI or not AI. Unfortunately, there's a lot of considerations, but those are considerations that are, even before we get technical, those are the business considerations, right? In terms that we need to be able to go through as well. So,
Staying on what you just said about returns versus rewards, I mean,
Yep.
any instances where you have personally seen AI misapplied, recent experiences, and the lessons that we can take away from that?
I think as I was thinking about it, when we think about misapplied, I would say kind of two parts of it, two different types of misapplication. Uh, One will be unsuccessful implementation as a form of misapplication. So let's kind of go through that one first. So AI has been around for a while, not the Gen AI bit, but AI has been around for a while.
Yep.
And what has been common from an AI perspective that people typically try and do is predictive maintenance, to try and predict the maintenance of machine parts. It could be whatever. It could be car parts. It could be lights. It could be in your estate, the lifts. So many different variations of it from the angle. And the challenge that we have is predictive maintenance is a well-known form of AI, but when it's unsuccessful, it's typically what we see due to, or what based on my experience, due to two challenges. Right? One is the lack of data. It's kind of more common, right? We don't have enough data to be able to form sufficient history to be able to predict the future, right? We need quite a fair bit of variations from that perspective as well. That's typically most common. What is under the hood of that, which a lot of people tend to not take that take into consideration as well, is the lack of clean, or in current terms, curated data. Data needs to be good enough in a certain shape, form, or size for us to be able to use it. Case in point, for example, if I'm trying to do lift maintenance to predict, and what's the source of data I'm trying to potentially get in, the source of data will be of fault reports. It will be of big parts replacements. And if you look at parts replacements, if you look at the ecosystem, how it works, it's actually input by the service repairman.
Yeah.
And if you double click further, the service repairman actually has an SLA he needs to meet. And if he doesn't meet the SLA, he's going to get defaulted and has to pay a fine. What's the chance that this guy is going to put in the parts and the SLA in the right way to show that the actual fact versus showing the fact that he doesn't have to pay a fine? If we take that into consideration, and if we really, really peel the onion down, and we look at how the data is coming in, how clean is this data for us to be able to predict? We're going to predict based on, again, rubbish in, rubbish out. Based on the fact that I, as a repairman, going to put in that, say, I meet the SLA and these are the necessary parts. The prediction is going to take that into consideration and be able to predict something. So the whole current conversation is around guardrails. That's the latest term, but essentially we want to be able to ensure that certain biases don't float up as we try and do the prediction as well. So that's example of unsuccessful implementation. Example of, I mean, there are lots out there you can find as well. The other, which is probably a little bit more aligned to what you mean by misapplied, will be when there is a lack of clear outcomes of, we're talking about in and out, right? Lack of very clear outcomes of what that would be. Case in point, in the case of the X number of years I've been trying to do this as well, we do get people coming to us probably in the early stages. I think that has evolved a little bit, but depending on groups of audiences as well. We've been asked to predict stock performances. That as an outcome. It's a very broad outcome. Tongue in cheek, we'll probably say that if I could do that, I won't be doing what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
Right. So if I can really predict what's the outcome of the stocks to begin with, right? But if we were clearer to define the outcome to say between stock A and stock B, which one will be better within the next 3 days, very well defined, very clear out, and very specific set of information that we can potentially go do that as well, right? Versus just in general, what's performance of stock? That's one example of. The other example of a clear outcome, an example where in the past one of things we were working with was an organization that was doing a critical infrastructure that was outdoor, and this critical infrastructure is subjected to the weather, subjected to thunderstorms, subjected to lightning. And one of the challenges they had was when the lightning happens and the thunderstorm happens, if it strikes the critical infrastructure equipment, it's going to be a problem because it could potentially not work the next day when and where you need to switch it on as well. So in the course of conversation, that felt like, hey, if I could use computer vision, if I could understand from a background perspective if the lightning is going to strike, and therefore I need to from there do better maintenance and be able to look into it and try and address it early before the equipment fails. Sounds like a very nice use case. From an outcome perspective, when we double click and drill down, we ask them one specific question: how accurate does it need to be? Because it's critical infrastructure, they say it must be 100% accurate. Because if not, it's going to go down and lives are in danger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just taking that as a point of reference, it says that no AI will guarantee you 100%. So what's the mitigating factor? Essentially, you decided to say every day you should have somebody go around like a security officer to go check. That's a lot easier, and you can ascertain better accuracy. You can have 2 security guards checking if you want to, and plus on top of that, other things, right? And maybe on top of that, CCTV, you look at it to ensure that that accuracy is really 100% versus having a machine giving you a high probability, which can never, no one will ever guarantee you that it works. So that's one of those outcomes that as we double click and drill down, say that it didn't fit a good use case for AI, is therefore potentially misapplied if you tried to do that. And the interesting anecdote that we actually had was that on top of that as well as if you put a computer vision and you put a camera that's facing this critical infrastructure and there's a lightning in the back, a question actually came out and said lightning could be 10 kilometers down. We don't really know if it's striking the infrastructure. It looks like it is because they superimpose and layer on top of it. So those problems started to come up. And that's where you realize that, hey, no, I don't think we can apply AI in the right context in this scenario as well. Yeah.
You mentioned outcomes a number of times. I like to look at it from an evaluation perspective, right? I mean, sometimes I think there seems to be a disconnect between metrics used to evaluate AI models and the metrics that drive business decisions.
Yes.
Like in your opinion, how can we effectively bridge that gap and ensure that that AI initiatives are aligned with tangible business goals?
That's actually one of the larger fundamental challenges between the folks who do the AI, and typically the folks who do the AI are not the business owners, right? Who actually receive the benefits of AI. 2 different people with 2 different lens to that coin from that triangle, 2 different sides of the coin from that angle as well. So if you look at it from a business owner or a business user point of view as well, it needs to be able to drive quantifiable business impact, right? The term is quantifiable, and therefore means the ability to track and measure. And impact will mean that there's a need to drive improvements on top of it as well. It's something that you must be able to change, must be able to effect, right? Any AI, you won't get it right the first time round. There's a need to be able to drive and improve. If you can't change it, you can't improve it, defeats the purpose of it.
Absolutely.
Right. So from a business user perspective of things, from a business benefits perspective of things, it needs to ensure that you have the right metric or calculation that you can look at it in a consistent manner, that you know how to tune and know how to tweak. So what's the challenge with that? There's a dependency of that, right? If you look at some of the Gartner research and from McKinsey potentially as well, one of the things that they'll talk about is quite a fair bit of implementation is human in the loop approach, which essentially take, for example, if I'm doing propensity modeling to try and identify who's likely to go buy the next phone. If my human in the loop requires me to pass this data to a call center person, and the call center person is the one who makes the call out, there's a human in the loop that actually takes the recommendation and may or may not execute it in the same manner, right? We're talking about A/B testing kind of approach of things as well. So when there's human in the loop, we don't really 100% know if the model that was kind of given does drive the outcome. Yes, there are ways of doing it by looking historically. That's typically what the development algorithm development process works as well. I'll take a training set, I'll take a test set, I'll look at historical, I'll pretend or predict that it can work, and be able to drive that model development to do the test. But that's historical. When you push comes to shove, when it comes to the execution, if there's a human in the loop, do you really 100% know if it works or it doesn't work?
Yeah.
That's one consideration, right? In relation to the co-pilot conversation recently as well. Of course, the other route, if it's a pure machine implementation, yes, you have direct attribution to the model, because if I produce a list of people who are going to buy mobile phones, I'm going to just email them consistently. Everyone's done the same way, and then we can look at all the different attributes that can factor into it as well. So that allows me to better measure the impact. So that's one of the considerations. In the data, in the AI world, that quantifiable business impact, sometimes it becomes a challenge because quite a fair bit, there's the human in the loop in terms of both data coming in as well as taking the data out and executing on it. If it's a pure machine end-to-end, less of a problem. That's a perennial problem of why it's sometimes a challenge to justify AI investments from that perspective as well, above and beyond the hype.
Again, it's a case of, when you say justify, it's a case of whether is it actually needed, or is it yeah, I think it's needed, but I have to also explain why it's needed, and I have to justify the decisions behind it.
Correct. And therefore, how much money you're going to put behind it.
Exactly.
It's sometimes a leap of faith, unfortunately, as well. And to your point, you were saying about the matrix that folks typically look at, the AI people, they look at the model performance. There's so much out there with GenAI, your Claude, your Anthropic, your OpenAI. Everyone's doing comparison, which model is best. These are the tech guys. They are doing which model is best in whatever particular scenario, in math scenario, language scenarios, and they're starting to look at performance. And they're starting, specifically within let's say Southeast Asia, there's models that are coming up that's supposed to look at local language. They're supposed to be doing better in local language than English from the angle as well. So there's so much of that. People are refining that box. For lack of a better word, you're trying to build a better microwave, right? You're just tuning a little bit here and there. You're changing the screen, changing the glass, maybe instead of microwave using oven, convection ovens and things to that extent. But that's just how you cook it. What's most important is the turkey that comes out of it, right? Do you like to eat it, and do you want to eat it? That's the first primary. What kind of ingredients are you going to put out of it? What are you going to get out of it? Most of the business consumption of it, people don't really care about the oven or the microwave. People care about what is the ingredient I put in, and therefore what I get. But the guy who is implementing implementing the AI, typically the mindset is, how do I build a better oven, a better microwave? And that's where they start to go into things like accuracy indicators, precision, reliability. All your mathematics typically come in here. The term that you would hear a lot of mathematicians use will be a confusion matrix, for example. I'm not going to go there because it's confusing to understand.
It's a whole different conversation altogether.
We need a lot of illustrations in order to do it. And still not that's right. But the main important thing is that the North Star, right? The business outcome is the North Star. All this matrix, which models is better, what's the performance of it, those are just the interim steps, right? The processing of the information in order to get to the North Star. The North Star must be really clear what you're going to try and get out of it from the angle.
Okay. Any emerging metrics or KPIs that you find particularly valuable, that you find particularly valuable in the Singaporean context for quantifying AI's contribution to the bottom line from your experience?
From my experience, actually, we still go back to fundamentals, because the fundamental will still be, what's the problem you're trying to solve? A lot of the innovative metrics are more around how they look at the AI performance and the AI models, and it isn't really a business metric per se. There's quite a ton of it there from the angle, but it tends to get lost. You try and take like a accuracy and precision metric to a business conversation, it's quite tough because ultimately it may or may not result in the outcome that we're trying to look end of the day. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now I'd like to touch on emphasizing competitive advantage. See, a lot of businesses rely on off-the-shelf AI solutions, but there's a growing trend, towards building in-house capabilities, and for good reasons as well, as it provides greater control and customization, among others. So, in this instance, how should companies assess the trade-offs between these options? Like, for example, what questions should they ask themselves to ensure their AI strategy aligns with their overall business goals?
I think so. That's something I'm deliberating within our head as well, and that's a direction that we are thinking of internally. I use the term build or buy, right? You either build it or you go buy it, right? One of the key considerations, as you rightly pointed out as well, is it, if I do build it, is it meant to be a competitive advantage? Is it meant to be something that I can differentiate how I engage with my users, engage with my members, engage with my customers? If it's productivity gain, yes, it can help me speed up my summarization. It can help me do my transcript better. It can help me maybe write my proposal better. Is it something, do I need to build it? Or is it something I can buy potentially? And there's quite a fair bit of buy available from the angle as well. That's first point. How is it competitive and sustainable competitive advantage? Is it a differentiator? The second point is, do you actually have the data as an asset internally, which is proprietary to yourself? If you don't, you can't build anything anyway. You'll be building a skin on top of open data, right? Do you have that? Do you have that ability to build that curated data set, something that you can say is yours, and something that is therefore not available outside? That's the second point for consideration as well. The third point of consideration is it something you're willing to, are you vested to sustain it and to keep investing money to maintain it and to develop it and grow it? The reality is AI will never be a one-hit wonder.
Yep.
It will take time to iterate. It will take time to evolve. You're never going to get it right the first time around. And you need to have the fortitude to sustain, to keep doing it. And these three things are the first consideration if I wanted to build. If I wanted to build, is it going to give me something that's differentiated? Do I have the data and am I able to put the data together? Am I going to keep doing it for a long time? If it's going to be a one-off, not necessarily as important from that angle as well. The other consideration on top of that is, do you see it as a game changer, or is it something of a slow evolution? Right? If it's a game changer, and which means that you potentially need to take a leap of faith, and you need to look at it as a disruption from a technology perspective, or is it something that you're willing to let it have a slow burn, kind of figure it out? To a certain extent, you want to be a market leader or do you want to be a follower? Right? If you want to be a follower, you can do that slow evolution and see where the market potentially goes as well. So that's kind of the consideration. And if I put myself in the shoes of an organization wanting to do AI, right? And to begin with, probably I know not as much. How do we go about building that understanding, gain that knowledge and appreciation of it? My approach will be, I will do a buy first, right? Because maybe potentially I'll iterate at some point in time to a build, but using a buy allows me to quickly switch on, and I can take multiple variations of it. I can take 3 or 4 different types of models through 4 different types of vendors, and I can see which is better. Ultimately, I focus on outcome, right? When I do that, I build a better appreciation, which works, which doesn't work. What are the nuances within the model? How does the model fit into a larger scheme of the ecosystem of that solution as well? Then at some point in time, I will build my own knowledge to say, hey, I know enough now that I can build. I know what of solution A, B, C I like, and is it worth my time and effort to try and build a hybrid of the three? Then do I therefore do the build? That's one of the approaches that I will take. The reason why we do that, because of the hype that's in the market right now. I would say every other alternate week or so, there's always a new announcement about what AI can do. There's an explosion of new things. It's very hard to keep up. My day job, or I think most other people's business, I would say consumers' day job, will be not to keep up with what is available in the tech world, but to look at the benefits. And it's hard to build the internal capability to keep up with it. You're almost building your own research team to keep up with their research as well. Why not want to reap the benefits and we use that as a point of reference as well? I think the industry will keep evolving for the next couple of years. And as they evolve, new business models and how they want to use the data, new operating models will do appear as well. If you do start building a bill, you don't want to get affected 3 months down and say, hey, actually there's something else new and something else different. Case in point, I would say a couple of years ago, RPA was the hot topic. Everyone was trying to do robotic automation, process automation. We were building bots on it with lots of rules. Now everything is thrown out because they now the point of reference is GenAI could probably do the same with a lot lesser rule. So the amount of time invested in that, would it at the point in time you take a step back, and in retrospect it's always easy to say, but you kind of take a step back in terms of at that point in time, did we want to build every single thing? Or could we have gone with a buy model potentially to understand and appreciate that better, and before we took the leap of faith to do a build as well? So those are things that kind of go through my head as I look at different organizations and provide my perspective in terms of which way do we go, some of those assessments that we have to do.
So it's like get off the shelf. I mean, especially if you're starting out or you're just getting into the groove. So get something off the shelf, and then identify what works for you from that off the shelf product, what suits whatever business problems that you're trying to solve, and then over a period of time, once you get the gist of how it can be applied effectively, then you actually lean towards building your own in-house capabilities based on whatever data or whatever feedback that you get from the off-the-shelf solutions that you have at your disposal. Is that a simple way to put it?
Yep. That's very precise from the angle. I want to add one thing on top of it as well. We've been talking quite a fair bit about getting very clear on the outcome. Sometimes the reality is it's very hard to be very precise on the outcome. You think of prompt engineering, right? You have a certain structure, but you need to ask it many times and refine it until that yes, you get the right prompt, you get the right question. Similar analogy to defining the right outcome. Sometimes as you build it, you kind of know where you want to get to, but to be very specific and clear about outcome, you kind of have to do it. And using the off the shelf, you get a better sense of, hey, maybe I should have refined my statement a bit, refined my outcome. Maybe it can do this, it cannot do that kind of thing. Then it can help you in the journey to move things forward as well.
Understood. Okay. All right, Matthew, this has been great stuff. So let's move on. Let's conclude on a little bit of a fun note. Okay. So, I mean, we all have our moments in a day. So I'd like to know, what time of the day do you get your best work done?
Best work done. The quietest time of the day, which is first thing in the morning. I get to office about 8:30ish. The mails and the messages don't really come in yet. So it's a real nice quiet time to just clear stuff and get our priorities straight in terms of where you want to go. And sometimes in the world of connected working, right? It's while en route to work actually. Take a bus, sit down, have thinking time, think about what you want to do and where you want to focus on from the angle as well. Those kind of my best times.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to start. Like, when there's very minimal distraction, very minimal notification noises, all in popping in and out, that's when you can do your best work, and then all hell breaks loose after that.
Yes, that's right. Then it's firefighting for the rest half of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, Matthew, your expertise has been invaluable. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your practical advice on how businesses can navigate the complexities of AI. I hope our listeners have gained valuable insight from this conversation, and I encourage everyone to continue exploring the possibilities of AI with a discerning and strategic approach. If you're looking to leverage AI in your business, remember, it's not just about the technology. It's about solving real problems and delivering real value. AI isn't a magic wand. It's a tool, though, that needs to be wielded thoughtfully. Thank you for watching. Please check out cexpose.tech on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our website, cexpose.tech. The links are in the description. I'll see you again in our next episode with more tech and more talk.